take a moment and just be willing to think about who told them what forgiveness is. Is it your definition that you're living, or is it someone else's? Because for me, forgiveness isn't just about saying I'm sorry. Forgiveness is about finding out about ourselves so that we can find what's blocking us from being our magnificence that we are.
Has your life, your dreams been interrupted? Good news. It is possible to reinvent our lives. People are doing it every day, and some are brave enough to share the struggles, disappointments, and challenges. If you are looking for a new beginning, a do-over, or to rediscover your passion, maybe even find a new one, then grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Interrupted, Act 2, Reinventing Your Legacy, with your host, Coach Lori.
Brenda Reiss has a podcast called Forgive Yourself Podcast. Welcome.
Hi, Lori. Great to be here.
How did you come up with Forgive Yourself Podcast? Like, why is that the topic you chose?
It's actually named after the book that I wrote. It's also because I'm a forgiveness coach. Just fell into line because forgiveness is something that I have found that a lot of people are afraid of. They don't quite know what to do with it. A lot of people don't know how. They don't know what to do with forgiveness. When the forgiveness work found me, I'm like, I got to help people with this.
What originally brought you to that kind of work, that forgiveness would become something you make a career of?
I wasn't planning on forgiveness. What happened was my third divorce. Mm-hmm. And in that third divorce, I was finding that I kept being triggered. I was trying to forgive my ex, but I couldn't. And I ended up with my body breaking down. So I needed a back fusion, a neck fusion, and I ended up with a brain tumor. So my body was trying to get my attention. And it was in between those surgeries that I say the forgiveness work actually found me. And it was a beautiful thing because I didn't really know I needed forgiveness. We were going to take a trip. I started dating my now husband. I looked at this pamphlet for going to Mount Shasta. And in the back of that pamphlet, it had a little picture of a gal. And next to it said, forgiveness coach. And something inside me went, I don't know what that is, but I got to know what that is. It's divinely guided because I called her and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm booked up for that time period. I was going to be there just for a weekend. And then she calls me back within a half hour and says, oh my gosh, I just had a cancellation. And she's the one that helped me find a pattern that I had been going to therapy for years over. She helped me find a pattern, is where it took me back to the root. It's a number pattern in my life that I didn't know I had. And when we found that, my whole body, it just made sense. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to teach other people about this. I need to help other people. How do you do this? She introduced me to the radical forgiveness process. And then I took training for 2 years and became a coach.
When I hear about forgiveness, I hear people say, well, I forgave and moved on. And what I've recognized in my life is it doesn't feel like just a one-time thing. It feels like layers and layers. Often I wonder if people really know how to get through that.
I don't think so. And that's what I find mostly when I work with people and when I talk to people. Because what I say is forgiveness is a process and a practice. And there are layers because our stories have layers. What we find, what keeps us stuck in a story is our beliefs and patterns. Until we can get to the root of that, I'm going to call it pretend like we forgave. Because what I was finding was I was forgiving so easily. I'm like a forgiving person. But really what I was doing was not looking at my own pain. I was covering that up. I was just trying to get to the other side of it, like a lot of us do. But what happens is my body breaking down because the body keeps the score. So my body was trying to tell me, Brenda, you can't hold on to this anger. You can't hold on to this resentment. This is going to show up somehow physically. And of course, neuroscience today is showing us that. If we can get to that, we don't ever really just forgive. Now, there's some people that can, if they can really know themselves, empathize with the other person and themselves, they can get to a place of forgiveness and they feel free. Mm-hmm. For the majority of us, I'm a little slow learner.
Well, I love that you say it's connected to belief system because there's two things that I thought of. One is when I was 14, I went to this, I don't know, it was a seminar, and the person said, if you don't forgive the person that's causing you grief, You will become just like them. And I was like, oh, not on my watch. And so I feel like I came to a place of learning how to let go at an early age. But I just recognized I did this workbook. First thing was, what resentments are you holding on to? And I'm like, none, I forgive. Oh boy, I felt like a toddler because some of the resentments I had were so ridiculous. And then what I struggled with is I couldn't just let go. And I knew that I was going to have you on the show. And I was so excited because I thought I grew up as a Christian. And so it's like, just forgive. But I don't know that anybody ever really teaches us how. So you're saying there's a whole process to forgiveness.
Exactly. And that's how I felt too, because that's what I was trying to do with my ex. Just supposed to understand where they come from, give them some compassion. But I can't give somebody else compassion if I don't have it for myself. I can't. I was trying to do that. Every time I saw a Metro bus, I would break down because he's a Metro bus driver. Every time I saw somebody with a bald head, it looked like him, I would break down. So I'm continually being triggered. And I'm going, how long is this going to take for me to get to forgiveness and be able to move forward? Because that's what I wanted. And I know that's a question for a lot of people. What this process gave me was a process. This radical forgiveness is a 5-step process. And when you go through the process, it really helps you to understand what the resentment is and be able to feel the feelings, because that's the other thing that we don't like to do.
Hate that.
Yes, exactly. And then we're able to kind of separate the story, the fact from what I make up about it. And then I get to reframe it so that maybe, just maybe, I can look at life as happening for me, but not to me, if I become willing to look at my story differently. And then I bring in the energy of the new story. And that's the process, which absolutely shifted for me. Now, I'm not going to say it's an overnight thing, because it's not. It was a lot quicker than me trying to do it on my own and just letting what they call bygones be bygones and just have compassion for the person. I think it's important to have faith. I think it's important to have something to hold on to, but we also need a guide. And those steps gave me a guide. And of course, in the training, because we always teach what we have to learn,
exactly.
What I call filleted me open. And I looked at all of the resentments. And it's interesting, right, Lori, when you look at where you're holding it, because we're holding it in our bodies, because we're energy beings, we're holding it in our bodies. And it's causing dis-ease in our bodies. And it's fabulous when we can start identifying those things and then bring them out in the open, create awareness. And if we can take responsibility for our actions and what we can do moving forward, because what happened, happened. I can't change that. But am I going to continue to let this person or situation rob me of my present and my future? No, I don't want to do that. So I need a way to be able to really reconcile that within myself.
I've often heard people say, because I'm in the recovery world, I teach people to become recovery coaches. I hear them say, well, I'm not letting them off the hook. In my life, I've recognized enough. They're not on the hook. I'm on the hook when I choose not to forgive. But it is so much deeper. So you wrote a book, you do the therapy with people. If you're feeling really stuck, and this is what I heard myself saying, I'm doing all the things, every marketing thing for my business, everything I was doing all the things, but I wasn't getting the same results. And I was saying, what is wrong with me? Well, what I recognized then what was wrong wasn't necessarily with me, but I was holding on to these resentments. The little trivial ones I was holding on to seemed to boil down to I wasn't feeling seen or heard.
Exactly. It's the emotional component that a lot of the doctors don't look at, because a lot of us have that. We have a dis-ease somewhere in our body. And a lot of it is the fact of, if we start and we take a look and we write down what you did, just what are my resentments? I have everybody start with a forgiveness list. Just start writing down everybody, anything you can think of that you're resentful. And a lot of people at first go, oh, this seems dumb. But then when you start to write, you're like 3 pages in going, oh, wow. Because we do. When we allow ourselves to feel where we have been wronged, the hurt, the sadness, the betrayal, when we allow ourselves to feel, because that's the piece that in my head I said, I forgive you. We forget about neck down, because neck down is where we have closed ourselves off because of that childhood trauma. It's not safe to feel. And a lot of us aren't taught that feelings are actually okay to have. And it's okay to feel sad. But what happens is it gets compounded. So if you're hurt when you're little, we kind of bury that because we don't know what to do with it. And then it builds and builds and builds. It has to come out somehow. And if I'm not recognizing it, my body's going to try to get my attention, because the body doesn't lie. I have physically experienced it myself and a lot of my clients. have done the same. And they're like, Brenda, I know that I'm going through different ailments. I know this has to do with something, but I don't know what. And that's the beauty of the forgiveness work and the awareness like that. When you start with writing down your resentments, whoa, you just take a look at those resentments. Where have I felt the same? Where have I felt the same? Not the same situation, but where have I felt the same? How far back does it go? You wouldn't go back. It goes back to childhood.
When you started to work with the coach and you started to get freedom, what did you notice?
Oh, I noticed a shift. I felt better. I lived my life in fear, a lot of it fear. And I hear other people say this. It was like afraid to be seen, afraid to be heard. And the interesting thing was I was getting out of corporate, 30 plus years in corporate, and starting this entrepreneur thing. I had no desire to be a solopreneur, entrepreneur. I had no desire. I was going to die in corporate because that was my little safety box. That was scary. So as I was looking at this, it's like what I noticed was I was able to show up more. I was able to do the work like networking. I was even afraid to do that. I was afraid to be on video. Now you can't shut me up on video and on radio shows. I could start to show up, be present in my life, and I wasn't so afraid because I was identifying the things that were keeping me stuck or keeping me hidden. Because when I had the self-doubt, when I wasn't being seen, heard, I didn't feel that I was worthy and I didn't think I mattered. Those are the biggies that I had. And I think that's common for a lot of us. So if I don't matter, I can't show up and look you in the eye. And then I have shame and guilt. So once we address that in the forgiveness work, because that's what happens, is we address that, we decipher whether is your guilt a healthy guilt or an unhealthy? Most of the time, 90% we're carrying unhealthy guilt. We don't need to be carrying the guilt, but we take it on. And the shame can come from that. It's who I think I believe I am. Is not a good person, or I don't matter, I'm not enough. When we start addressing that, we start standing up straighter. We start being able to, our voice gets a little stronger, and we're able to look people in the eye. And the other thing is that I felt more connected to my heart than I'd ever done before. And that was a real biggie for me because I spent most of my life kind of living my life from my neck up.
In the self-help world, we see a lot of confidence, speak it and be it. And what I recognize is I do believe a lot of that is good because we do benefit from self-talk. But if we don't get to the root, Coach Lori here, I am not anti-aging. I am all about aging gracefully. Did you know we stop making collagen at a certain age? And did you know powdered collagen has to go through your whole digestive system? So I am a big fan of Glow Liquid Collagen. It helps me age gracefully, inside and out. To order, check the link below. By the way, if you order two at the same time, free shipping. Or if you would like to be an affiliate, make a little extra cash, click the affiliate link. If somebody signs up in your coaching program to walk through this forgiveness, what does that look like?
The important part is to be able to invest in yourself because it's not, like I said, an overnight deal. And having someone in your corner is really important to help call you on your stuff because we all get a little bit of resistance. So it's a 3-month process to start. And what we do is we meet weekly or every other week, depending on what works the best, very customizable. But what we do is then we go through the process. And I also meet people. So it's not just forgiveness that we talk about because forgiveness is a foundation piece. It's a tool that we have because once we start uncovering the forgiveness and we start to get that freedom and that lightness, because those are the two words that people say, I feel freer, I feel lighter. And once we get that, now what do? We got to fill that back up. The universe abhors a vacuum, right? It's going to fill it up with something. We don't want to go back to those patterns and beliefs. So we need some tools to keep us moving forward. There's layers. And so what I do is I help create the tools. We help look at our future self. Who is it that you want to become? Because we've been hiding ourselves from who we are. So once I discover who I am, now who do I want to become? How do I want to show up in the world? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? A lot of us, especially women who've gone through a lot of abuse, we don't know how to dream. We're afraid to dream because that perfectionistic tendency gets in there. What if I fail? Remember, I don't matter. So those kind of things can pop up. You hear the saying, new level, new devil. Like when you level up in your business or in a job or new level, new devil. And I'm thinking, oh, no. New level, same devil. Because it's the layers you were talking about. All I'm doing is addressing it on a deep layer, but I've got the tools now, so it's quicker. So that's really what I do. It's quicker for you to identify what's going on so that we can catch it faster, quicker, And then we can roll through it. And that's what helps create our resiliency.
What I see, I work with women in their 50s and 60s. They can't rely on Social Security. And so they're looking at, what am I going to do? I always want to encourage women to take their expertise, take their knowledge, and build some sort of a side hustle, a business. But if they don't have that confidence, they're going to be like where I was, saying, I'm doing all the things and I'm not getting the results because they're stuck. And so I think what's so important is, especially older women, because we came up in a different generation where abuse was almost accepted. Many people stayed longer because they didn't know they had choices. What would you say to someone in their 50s or 60s?
You are just beginning. I didn't start this work until I was 51, 52, the forgiveness work. It's just where you're kind of becoming aware. I think that's the beauty of aging, is we become aware and we're a little less, like 50s, you still care what other people think, but you're a little less caring, but you're really asking those questions. Who am I? What am I here for? And that's what I want to encourage with women. I want to encourage women in their 50s and 60s to be curious. Instead of I'm done, be curious. Tap into, what is it that lights me up? What is it that's within me that really makes me happy? Because we've worn all the hats. We've done most of the time the motherhood or all the things, the wife. Some people are sitting divorced or widowed. God, what is there left to do? Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah. And the biggest thing that I was encourage women in our 50s and 60s is to forgive ourselves.
How do we know that we haven't forgiven? How do we even know that that's a thing?
So the way that you tell that you haven't forgiven yourselves is by your negative language to yourself, negative self-talk. If I'm looking in the mirror in the morning, instead of going, hey, friend, if I'm going, oh, Jesus, look at this hair, look at these wrinkles, look at this, and like, oh, God, you screwed up yesterday. I don't want to go. Or look at how fat you are. When we look at ourselves in the mirror, or I feel fat, when we're berating ourselves, we haven't forgiven ourselves. And sometimes we can do the mantras and we can do things, but there's still the belief that's underneath that says, I don't matter. I'm not good enough. And that pops up in different ways. Can I look people in the eye? Can I step up and do that side hustle? Do I feel confident in just being me? Am I willing to play, or do I feel like I have to work all the time to prove myself? Because a lot of us have this, especially 50s and 60s, we had to prove ourselves, prove our worth to the world. We're hustling everywhere, trying to do it, and we're tired. And so the way to tell that is like, gosh, am I keeping myself so busy? Because I spent a lot of time hiding behind the busy. I was afraid to look at myself.
And you bring up a good point, because I think something that I did was I was able to muster the confidence to do radio, to do the things I needed to do. But there was that underneath part of me. I was doing some of the work, like you said, layers, but it wasn't until recently I realized that it's not like just the big forgivenesses of the major things in your life. It's the little things.
Take an inventory of your life up to this point. One, write down the resentment list. Write down this forgiveness list. Is like, who am I holding resentment against? And who, what, where, even institutions, everything. Right. We all have something that's like the bank or the IRS or, some things, right? So we all have that. If we start writing those down, that's really important. The other thing, too, is to take a relationship inventory. Take a look at the relationships and start either from birth to now or start now back to birth. Do a relationship inventory and see what relationships were significant and what were they like. Just writing down some words of how you felt in them and how you were treated. What were they like? And that's how you find a pattern. And you take a look and then you see how far back it goes. Because remember, it's that pattern. It's those beliefs and pattern that are really sabotaging us. And it's ours, but we may not know what they are. This is a really good way to uncover them. And because we can't be confident, yes, we can suit up and show up, and that does help. But am I sabotaging myself every time? Am I feeling scared every time I have to be on the radio show? Am I scared every time I have to give a presentation? Yeah. It's like, oh, now part of it's normal to be nervous, but am I scared like I don't know what I'm talking about?
What I'm hearing is that it sets the thermostat of our life. So like we can muster enough confidence to do what we need to do, but we don't ever soar above that.
Yes.
And it sounds like when we are willing to do the work and really take a look, and I would say hire a coach. I'm a coach. Yes. I always say get a coach, get the work done, do it quick, get the support and love to get through it. And then the possibilities just seem endless. Women in their 50s and 60s have so much wisdom. and so much to share, whether it's stories or insight or teaching something. And I think we're so lucky that podcasting is something we could even do from home.
Yes.
When we begin to get in touch with who we are and what we have to offer, we want to serve. We want to give back in a different kind of way. Can you talk about that?
Thank you for bringing that up about the 50s and 60s and our wisdom years, because that's really what they are. And that's what I read about early on. And if you look at other countries or even indigenous tribes, they actually respected elders. But in our country, we feel invisible. So it's our job as women to not become invisible. And let's claim our place. Instead of saying, I'm sorry all the time for taking up space. No, we stand in this power. It's like, who am I now? I'm not going to be that 20-year-old. I'm not going to have that body of the 20 or 30-year-old unless I really want to work super hard. But that's just it. It was like, I have this wisdom. How can I share it? Then again, what lights me up, and being willing to take up space, being willing to look at other women and build each other up instead of compare ourselves. We hear this a lot, but it needs to be said and it needs to be heard. Build each other up, because we're not out to compare and to hurt each other. We need to build each other up and raise ourselves to this point of being recognized and not be invisible. The way that I not be visible is to be out there and to be able to find something. Like I discovered, I didn't think I liked speaking. I didn't think that at all. I didn't think I was a teacher. I was going to be an executive assistant for the rest of my life. Always the wing person, never the pilot, because of where I felt I was. Man, once I learned this in my 50s, it was like, oh, I like this. And then being able to share a message and help other people feel included, because when we share, that gives permission for other people to do the same thing. And as women, we can reach up and we can reach back, and we can lift each other up. And I mean, I know that to some people that sounds hokey, but it's true. And I know that it reaches our hearts, because that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted someone to reach back and help me up. And then, somebody was reaching back, helping me up, and they were helping somebody else up and somebody else up. And I think in our 50s and 60s especially, these are really good years. They are. And now I'm in my 60s, and I'm like, oh, wow. I don't look the way I wanted to look. But man, does my heart feel fuller. And especially as we go through life's ups and downs, being able to weather any storm because of the resiliency we have, the wisdom we have. And now we can just go, oh, sweetheart, don't take yourself so personally, right? We can talk to younger women, and we can say that. In my 30s, oh my God, this world was just, I have to get this done now, and I have to be somebody. I was just trying to find myself. In 50s and 60s, I'm going, yeah, I am who I am.
For me, I know I lived a lot of my life in survival mode because I didn't know any different. And then when I was able to start getting help and getting mentors and getting support, recognizing, like you, there is more. We can serve in ways we never thought. Now, when I look at retirement, I don't see that, because I don't ever want to retire. I don't ever want to stop teaching and training and helping other people find what they love, what, like you said, what lights them up. To think that some people feel like they're done just actually breaks my heart.
It does me too. And that reminds me of grandparents, and even my mom's like 65 was the thing, the epitome of you get to there and you can retire. And I'm thinking, what? No, we're just getting going.
Yeah.
We're just getting going. And you made a really good point about with service. I did the same thing as a single mom. Family Resource Center, had to get some help. And then it was so cool as I started to gain resources myself, and I could turn around and I was helping them too, even before I had the resources. But I remember even just giving $5 to somebody or buying canned goods and giving to somebody made me feel really good. And I do that in a different way today by sharing my experience, strength, and hope, the podcast, or through speaking, or just in having conversations with people. I do Q&As by Zoom, starting them monthly, that people will be able to come on to and ask questions as a resource for those people that can't afford to work with me or aren't ready to work. Giving back like that just fills my heart, because it fills a need. We need that. Both of us, right? It's a giving and receiving. You're doing service work isn't just about the other person. It's about us too.
So if someone wants your book, what's it called?
Forgive Yourself. I have 2 books, actually. I have Forgive Yourself by Brenda Reiss, Reiss. And the other one is called A Journey to Your Heart Space. And it's a mandala book with an 11-step forgiveness process. So with each step, you have a mandala to color. And you also have journaling prompts. Both of those you can get on Amazon.
Okay. And your podcast is called?
Forgive Yourself, a place to turn your pain into peace.
And we can find that
anywhere you can listen to your podcast. You can go to my website, you can go to Spotify, Apple, or anywhere that podcasts are.
It's so good because you talk about so much more than forgiveness.
I do. Take a moment and just be willing to think about what they feel about forgiveness. Who told them what forgiveness is? Who told them what forgiveness is? Is it your definition that you're living, or is it someone else's? Because for me, forgiveness isn't just about saying I'm sorry. Forgiveness is about finding out about ourselves so that we can find what's blocking us from being our magnificence that we are. And so if we can start and look at and redefine forgiveness for ourselves, knowing where the other definition came from, then we can look at our lives, forgiveness, others, ourselves different. And that's what I really want to encourage people to do, because that's kind of my mission, is to be able to help people. Let's take a look at forgiveness and let's redefine it for you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thanks, Lori.
Do you have brain fog? Are you exhausted all the time? Do you struggle with depression? How about cravings? Imagine an enzyme that turns sugar into fiber. For a link to order your bottle, email me at lacoach@comcast.net. That's LACOACH at comcast.net. 3 things we learned from Brenda. Forgiveness is possible. It's also a process, and it's really more for you than the person you are forgiving.
If you love this podcast, here's a big ask. Will you share with your friends and family, subscribe, give us a review, and a 5-star rating so that others looking to reinvent their lives will be able to get the help they're looking for? Thank you in advance.